There's been a resurgence in turn-based RPGs, and over the last year or so, I made an effort to get more familiar with the JRPG genre. I dabbled with some classics, but I spent most of my time with the modern games that were inspired by them. Chained Echoes and Sea of Stars are indie gems that wear their influences on their sleeve, and Octopath Traveler 2 is from Square Enix, one of the OG greats that produced so many of those all-time classics. Let's take a look at these three modern retro JRPGs and find out if they've carved a place alongside their heroes. This is my review roundup for Chained Echoes, Sea of Stars, and Octopath Traveler 2. If you don't know about Chained Echoes, let me let you in on a little secret. There are dozens of indie RPGs inspired by the 16-bit classics, but 2022's Chained Echoes is the rare gem that actually deserves a spot alongside the greats that came before it, which is even more impressive when you find out about its creators, but more on that in a moment. Here's a perfect example of what this game brings to the table. It starts with a nearly identical scene to the opening of Chrono Trigger, with Mom trying to wake you up, and then suddenly you're being smacked across the face to find out that you're about to go into battle. And it's a perfect little scene that shows you this game is going to feel familiar in some ways, but it's also going to branch off and be a whole new experience. It's a classic turn-based RPG, but it does several things to modernize the experience a bit. I'm going to list 5 of the biggest ways it does this. Think of it as quality of life improvements to the tried and true JRPG experience. First of all, there's no level grinding or under-leveled characters. In fact, there are no levels for the characters at all, just levels for their abilities. You can level up attacks and powers, but you do it through regular gameplay and completing certain objectives rather than just roaming around and repeating the same encounters over and over. And everyone levels up together, so you don't have to worry about any one character falling behind or becoming more and more useless. Secondly, HP and TP, the game's version of mana or MP, refills after every encounter, so you can feel free to spam away on your favorite attacks. You don't have to hold them back in case a bigger enemy comes along, just go ham. And taking too much damage in one encounter isn't going to affect you in the next. You don't have to worry so much about potions and revives. Instead of managing that stuff, you manage the third improvement to the JRPG formula, the overdrive bar. Every time you use an attack or special ability, the bar goes up. When it's in the green zone, you do more damage and receive less, so it's super important to stay in it. But if it gets too high and goes into the red, then it has the opposite effect. Bring it back down by actually using the one ability I almost never use in other games, defend. There are other ways to bring it down, but the point is, managing your attacks in the overdrive bar is much more entertaining to me than trying to guess when's the right time to spend mana in potions. The fourth improvement? There are no random encounters. I'm never stuck grinding out battles right before I reach my destination, but more importantly, I'm not punished for exploring or getting curious. And you move so fast in the game. I mean, look at this. It's just another example of how anything that's tedious or uninteresting in these types of games was just sanded down. Improvement number 5 for me is the fact that your party can have up to 8 characters, and while you can only field 4 of them at a time, you can hot swap them in the middle of battle without losing a turn. So you create 2-person teams that can swap back and forth depending on how the battle is going and what skills you need most. Now, each of these improvements have been done before to some degree or another, but before this game, I'm not aware of anything that did them all at the same time or as well. Side note, I just reviewed Sea of Stars that came out 8 months after Chained Echoes, and it comes damn close to checking all these boxes too. In fact, if you compare these two games head to head, I may have enjoyed the combat in Sea of Stars a little more, but Chained Echoes still comes out on top as far as story and pacing goes. The game kept surprising me by rationing out new ideas, new mechanics, and story twists and turns throughout the game. It always felt like I was learning something new or there was some new story hook, and the game managed to roll out those at such a measured pace. It's hard to describe, but not many games are able to pull that off. I don't want to go into spoilers, but there are major aspects of the game that don't even appear in Act 1. I love story-driven games, and Chained Echoes is oozing with plot development and interesting characters. As much as I love all the quality of life improvements in the gameplay, it's the story that's the star of the show for me. That's what kept me coming back. And each time I played, it seemed like I was facing new enemies in new lands. The game is vast. The looting and crafting systems are deep. It's just jam-packed. But again, it's not overwhelming because it's introduced in such a deliberate way. And each time I played, I was impressed with what this team at Matthias Linda was able to create. Wait, is that just some guy's name? Are you telling me one person created all of this? Yeah, that's right. One guy developed the entire game, from the story and characters to the combat and crafting systems. That includes the art, like all the character portraits and the attack animations and the enemy designs, and I still don't know how one person did all this, but I suspect he wears an overcoat, and inside that coat are 3 or 4 smaller developers that each specialize in a different aspect of game development. One thing he didn't create is the soundtrack. That honor goes to Eddie, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name, but it is truly a stellar soundtrack. That's not to say the game doesn't have any flaws. I didn't fully understand the fusion abilities, and I'm sure I wasn't crafting and upgrading to the maximum effect. Some battles seem to drag on a bit, even with all the combat improvements. The game was shorter than typical JRPGs, but I'm fine with that. In fact, I would have been just as happy with an even shorter game, but I may be in the minority there. What about you? What's the ideal number of hours for you in an indie JRPG? The game is available pretty much everywhere: PlayStation, Nintendo, Xbox, Steam, and GOG. I haven't actually completed the game yet, but playing Sea of Stars got me thinking about this game a lot, because a lot of what I loved in Sea of Stars was done here first, and in some cases even better. But I'm highly confident nothing between now and the end of the game is going to change what I've talked about here. It's going to be a busy month ahead with reviews and impressions for Spider-Man 2, Forza, another indie I'm excited about called the Lamplighters League, and more, so hit that subscribe button if any of that sounds good to you. I've mentioned in other videos that I didn't play JRPGs until this year. I actually started Chained Echoes in December of 2022 when it launched on Game Pass, and I've been playing it off and on all year. In the meantime, I've reviewed Octopath Traveler 2, Sea of Stars, and I've even started playing through the original Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy I Pixel Remaster, and the original Chrono Trigger. So yeah, I'm all over the place. But the point is, even though Chained Echoes was on my backlog and getting shelved for shinier, newer games, this has been the year of JRPGs for me personally, and I think of Chained Echoes as the one that opened the floodgates. It's so good, it makes me nostalgic for games I didn't even play. Matthias Linda obviously loves the genre and owes that love to a pantheon of classics that inspired this game. I would love for him to know that what those games were for him is what this game is for me. It goes without saying at this point, but I give it a thumbs up, and I highly recommend it for story-driven strategic gameplay. Will you like Sea of Stars if you're not into JRPGs? The game is heavily inspired by classics like Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG, and it wears those inspirations on its sleeve. But I would say you can enjoy the game without having played those classics through the years. I know because I never played them. Sea of Stars is an indie RPG from Sabotage Studio, the makers of The Messenger, and it takes place in the same world but in a different timeline. I haven't played The Messenger yet, and I'm sure there are references, but nothing about this game made me feel like I was being left out or that it was tied to something else. This is a spoiler-free review, and I do show a little footage from the last third of the game, but nothing that will spoil any surprises. So what makes it a JRPG, and how is Sea of Stars different? First and foremost, Sea of Stars is a turn-based RPG, and gameplay consists primarily of combat and puzzle solving, with a bit of exploring, fishing, and interacting with NPCs for good measure. There are a lot of puzzle sections, and at times it reminded me of a classic 2D Zelda game. Although I would say the puzzles were a little challenging at times, I rarely felt stumped for very long. The turn-based combat had a unique twist: timing. Once you choose an action, you can press a button at the right time to add damage to your attacks or reduce damage from incoming attacks. I loved this mechanic because it not only kept me engaged with each individual action, but it also added a little randomness to the events. The game has another RPG staple, a kick-ass minigame. It's called Wheels, and it features a mechanical table with basically a slot machine and a pair of figurines. You combine symbols to attack or build defenses, and different figurines have different abilities. There were times I just sat back and played Wheels for the hell of it. I'd actually love to have a mobile version of this, and I feel like I could do an entire video on just Wheels strategies. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more about that part of the game. But as much fun as Wheels is, this isn't really a game about dawdling or messing around. The gameplay is tightly focused on moving your characters from one plot point to the next, which I really appreciate. There's a lot of story here, and the game keeps you moving. You play as a pair of solstice warriors, which are rare people born on the solstice and granted special powers of the sun and the moon. Along with your buddy Garl, you embark on an adventure to help your headmaster and the older Solstice warriors defeat a giant monster called a Dweller. Garl, as strange as it might sound, is the heart and soul of the game. He's loyal, stubbornly upbeat, and always overachieving. Compared to him, the main characters are just a little bland, without much personality. Which is why the story didn't really put its hooks into me right away, but man, did those hooks go in deep by the end of it. Again, this is a spoiler-free review, but let me just say you'll meet a strange cast of characters, roam all over the world, and do all this cool stuff, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. This story has layers. Anytime the game started to feel stagnant, or I felt like I knew where the story was going, it just blew my mind, and my expectations went right out the window. One thing I really liked about a tighter, more linear experience was that the game pretty much knows what level you'll be in any point of it, and enemies are tuned accordingly. I never felt underleveled or out of my league, and I also didn't feel overpowered or unchallenged, which leads me to the combat. Battles in Sea of Stars are turn-based, along with the timed button presses I mentioned earlier. There's also a lock system where enemies will have locks over their heads as they build up a special attack. The locks can only be broken with corresponding attacks, and you can choose to ignore the locks or you may not have the resources to break them, but enemies with locks do more damage and receive less, so it's usually best to break as many as you can. There are other things at play here, like using basic attacks to refill your mana or create little spears that allow you to add elemental damage to attacks that didn't have them. But the important thing here is that the combat is thoughtful and strategic, but it's also accessible. The game eases you into the concepts and layers, and by the end of it, even a turn-based novice will feel like a seasoned pro. And all player levels are welcome here. There are relics you can pick up and equip that can help ease the difficulty in varying degrees. There's a relic that ensures you start each encounter at full health. This is huge, and I'll admit I had this one turned on, which just made battles less stressful and less resource dependent. One relic simply shoots up a flare when you get the timing right, giving you an additional visual cue that helps dial in your timing. It's a fantastic turn-based combat system, as good as any I've played. Now, I'll admit there haven't been that many, but it's still really good. I will say that by the end of the game, the combat was starting to wear a little thin, and I was kinda happy anytime I could avoid it. One thing that never wore thin was the art. There's nothing new about pixel art, especially in this style of indie RPG. But Sea of Stars manages to look stunning, location after location. I love how they're able to add depth to what is basically 2D art. There are no perspective lines, but everything still feels like a living world and manages to look lush and beautiful. Or dead and spooky. There's such a wide range of locations and color palettes, and I was constantly in awe. Some modern lighting effects get layered in on top of the pixel art, but it's usually done in such a subtle way the whole presentation feels like something that could have been on a Super Nintendo, even though it couldn't. Quick side note, if you're enjoying this video, consider giving it a thumbs up, dropping a comment, or better yet, hit that subscribe button and give my tired brain a shot of dopamine. You get to see cool stuff like this, and I get existential validation. Everybody wins. I played it on PS5 and an Xbox Series S with my PlayStation Plus and Game Pass subscriptions, and I also played the demo on the Switch. It looks equally amazing and felt the same on all three platforms, as you might expect with a retro-inspired game like this. I think I would have preferred to play it on my Switch, but with all the games coming out this summer, playing it on a subscription service was too good to pass up. Cross-save is not enabled, and not only can you not transfer a saved game from one platform to another, but you can't even transfer from one generation to another. So if you play it on a PS4 now, you won't be able to pick up where you left off if you upgrade to a PS5. I also played the game through remote play on my phone, knowing that the PlayStation Portal is on the way. I'm happy to say that as long as both devices had a strong internet connection, it played fine. I was even able to work with the delicate timing that comes with combat, although not quite as effectively as playing naturally. In other words, I think I'd be fine if I had to play the entire game in remote play while my kid sits next to me watching Bluey on the big screen. I'll admit the game started a little slow for me, and it took several hours for the gameplay to pick up momentum. If you're a fan of 90s JRPGs, then you don't need to be sold on this game, and you'll probably feel right at home right away. But if you're new to this subgenre, or haven't had a lot of experience with turn-based combat, I'm guessing it may feel a little dull for a while. By the time you hit the port town of Bright, however, the story and gameplay starts to pick up momentum, and it's just a steady climb all the way to the crazy, amazing, unforgettable end. JRPGs are known for their epic storylines, and Sea of Stars leans in and hits most of the tropes. like young protagonists, an older mentor, a plucky sidekick, world-ending doom, you get the idea. It even pokes fun at itself for some of these, and I want to point out, it didn't feel like it was derivative or it wasn't creative. It really felt like the game was made by fans, for fans of classic JRPGs. And what was really special, for a newcomer like me at least, is that by the end of the game, I felt like one of those fans too. I loved this game, and I give it a thumbs up. Is Octopath Traveler 2 fun if you're new to JRPGs? There's an entire generation of gamers that grew up on Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, and other turn-based RPGs in the 90s, and there are a lot of games today that pander to that crowd. You might think I'm in this target audience, but I'm actually immune to the nostalgia because I was never into Japanese-style RPGs until recently. But now I'm trying them out left and right, and Octopath Traveler 2 may be my favorite one yet. The first Octopath Traveler charmed my socks off on Game Pass back in 2018, but I didn't know what I was doing and I kept losing battles I was pretty sure I should have been winning, so I didn't stick with it. This time around, I was able to grasp some of the basics in the combat, and it made all the difference. Basically, you have to break an enemy's armor and stun them before you can do significant damage, and you can only break their armor if you attack with the weapons and magic that they're weak towards. And then there's the boost system where you can build up extra oomph for your attacks. So when you combine proper boosting with efficient armor breaking, you'll be slashing and magicking your way through the stories with style. It follows the stories of 8 separate characters, hence the name Octopath, and each one has their own backstory and 4-chapter arc to follow. These characters can join up and level together, but you can only work on one story at a time, and you can only have 4 characters in your party, so there's a lot of stuff to do here to beat all the different storylines and their level requirements. There are a few crossover stories as side missions that are meant for a specific pair of characters, which is a pretty cool addition that wasn't in the first game, but all in all, these characters are mostly just companions along for each other's rides. There's not a lot of interaction here. But back to those 8 characters. The stories and character designs are really amazing. Each one feels like they could be the star of their own game, and they each have vastly different skills and abilities. And where the first game mostly used typical character tropes, in this one the personalities are more subversive. The wizard is a gnarled prison escapee. The assassin hates killing people and is trying to free herself from her circumstance. And the cleric is a condescending douchebag. I can't tell if douchebag was actually what the writers were going for, but that's what I got from it. Characters can interact with NPCs to gather info, learn new skills, or even pick their pockets clean. But new in the sequel is the addition of daytime and nighttime, and each character's ability to interact changes with the time of day. Throne, for example, can pick pockets during the day but can straight up ambush an NPC at night. Each of these interactions with each of these 8 characters has their own uses, so it's really helpful to spend a lot of time in town. The Octopath games are known for their pixel art mixed with modern 3D graphics and lighting, something Square Enix calls HD 2D. The effect is not just beautiful, it's also the perfect representation of what this game is. It has 1 foot in retro gaming nostalgia and 1 foot in modern innovation. And that's the trick. It somehow looks back while looking forward. It brings a fresh take on the games it so obviously adores, and in the process earns its place alongside them as far as I can tell. Because like I said before, I didn't even play these games back in the day, so I'm not just huffing nostalgia fumes here. It's genuinely a great game on every front. It has engaging stories, stylish scenery, and to say it has an amazing soundtrack is a gross understatement. I found it to be slower paced than most modern games, and I had to get past an initial learning curve. I'm not an expert on this style of game, but it seems like Octopath Traveler 2 has a depth and complexity that's a cut above, even if it's a little intimidating for a newcomer like me. But I did get the hang of it, and once it clicked I started enjoying the hell out of this game, and it's probably my favorite gaming experience so far this year. I give it a heavily pixelated thumbs up. There you have it, 3 reviews for a trio of JRPGs I thoroughly enjoyed in the last year. I don't know how I missed out on this entire genre for the last 35 years or so, but hey, it's never too late to try something new, which is also a great way to get out of a gaming rut. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where maybe your favorite game just doesn't hit the way it used to, you might want to check out this video about opening your gamer's soul, and I promise it isn't all mystical and stuff. Much. Thanks for watching. This adventure is complete.